This video was made in partnership with CuriosityStream. I've been trying to figure out how to do an ocean tier list or fish tier list for a while now, but the problem is there's just too many potential builds to include in a single video. So what better way to do it than to artificially restrict the scope of the video to the most well-known fictional server of all, Bikini Bottom. While not a real place, the characters are based on real animals that have their own special abilities and signature moves, some of which even affect the plot of individual Spongebob episodes. So which residents of Bikini Bottom and their real-life counterparts are the best in the current coral reef meta? As always, we'll start from the bottom and move up from there. So in F tier, we have the underwater squirrel build. Now don't get me wrong, I don't think squirrels are bottom tier in the arboreal meta. They have one of the highest mobility bonuses in the game in forests, and their teeth deal bonus damage to structures, making them excellent at bending wooden environments to their will, both in forests and suburbs. However, in the reef meta, squirrels are absolutely bottom tier, and this is evidenced by Sandy's many obvious difficulties overcoming pretty basic properties of an underwater playthrough. Sandy's powerful regenerating teeth, while normally a major asset, would actually be a huge liability in an underwater playthrough. Not only are they unable to deal any damage when stuck behind a glass helmet, but regenerating teeth eventually start to deal damage to the player when they go unused for a long time. So Sandy being forced to wear a suit for most of her playthrough is hugely detrimental. The rest of Sandy's stats are solid, but they're contingent more on her suit than anything else. For example, she's got really high defense due to her armor, but a single hit strong enough to crack her armor would easily mean game over for her, meaning she essentially has an HP of 1. Her other best stat is that she's got high intelligence, but there are far better intelligence builds to play in the reef meta, so her tier placement remains low. I don't want to waste too much time discussing the underwater squirrel build, since it's the most unrealistic build in Bikini Bottom, so let's move on to D tier, where we have the ocean snail build. Now, there are ocean snails that I consider high tier, like the cone snails, which have venomous spears. However, it's pretty clear that Gary is not one of these, and is instead a much more basic jack-of-all-trades style snail. Sea snails have exceptionally high defense levels, but not much else. They're nearly invincible while in their defensive stance, except against players with armor-piercing abilities. But, as we'll see, those abilities aren't uncommon in the reef meta, and as a result, sea snails have bad matchups against much of the rest of this list. In C tier, we have the crustaceans, which seem to comprise a large percentage of the Bikini Bottom player base, including Mr. Krabs, Larry, and Plankton. And yes, Plankton is most likely a type of copepod, which is a small crustacean. All three of these take the basic crustacean build and modify it for their own specific playstyle. Mr. Krabs sticks pretty close to the basic crustacean build, maintaining high defensive stats with relatively low mobility. The crab's armor is great at blocking most attacks, although again, armor-piercing abilities are fairly prevalent in the reef meta, so it's certainly not a foolproof strategy. The crab's claws, while not as powerful as the lobsters, are still great at crushing and grabbing other players, something even Mr. Krabs uses to his advantage at times. The lobster is a more offensive take on the crustacean build, having claws that can deal devastating damage in a single pinch or swing. In the show, we see Larry depicted as the strongest Bikini Bottom resident, and I have to agree, in raw power and for his size, he's number 1. The copepod, the creature that Plankton is based on, obviously lacks any form of defense and has extremely low HP, being easily defeated by stray blows that weren't even directed at him. The copepod's best stat would be stealth, which helps Plankton in a lot of his efforts to invade enemy bases, but also frequently ends up hurting him when he's trampled on because he was stepped on by a player that didn't detect him. One special ability I don't see mentioned in the show is the copepod's team strategy with the bacterium Vibrio cholera, which causes cholera, a damage over time effect that has scored countless wins against entire settlements of human players. While all three of these rank about the same on my tier list, I think it's safe to say that the lobster would win most frequently in a duel with the other crustaceans. But how about crab versus plankton? Countless times, Mr. Krabs is depicted defeating Plankton in battle, but only once is this battle a legal one rather than a physical one. And while I generally agree with the show's depiction of the physical battles, I can't really comment on how a battle would play out if it took place in a courtroom.
Who is the man in the suit? Tirzu needs me. Objection! Well, the thing about the crabs versus plankton case is how close it gets to real-life law. I should know because I've beaten the bar exam final boss on hard mode in New York and God mode in California. See, a restaurant owner like Mr. Crab can be liable to his patrons if he's negligent. Negligence requires 4 things: a duty between the parties, a breach of that duty, causation between the breach and the harm, and damages. Negligence is judged on a reasonable person standard, so his lack of a wet floor sign is pretty bad. And a reasonable restaurant owner would probably put out a sign or not have the floor soaking wet in the first place. But Krabs doesn't owe the same duty to a trespasser like Plankton. Plankton wasn't there to buy food, he was there to steal the Krabby Patty recipe. Therefore, Mr. Krabs probably didn't owe him a duty and wouldn't be liable to him in negligence, even if Plankton wasn't faking his injuries.
I'm sorry, Crab.
I go into far more detail on my own channel, where I explain how all of your favorite characters are probably breaking the law. Otherwise, you can probably find me playing the MMORPG World of Lawsuits in the professional Anthropocene server as Legal Eagle rules.
Thanks, Legal Eagle. At the bottom of B tier, we have the Starfish build. The Starfish build is one of those builds which spends very little evolution points leveling its stats, instead pouring all of them into extremely unique abilities. Their first ability is their Suction Cups, an ability they share with the Cephalopod faction. This gives them an extremely strong grip, granting them almost total immunity to knockback moves, and making their own grab attacks borderline impossible to mash out of. That second effect combos nicely into their second ability, their Extendable Stomach. This unique acid-based grapple attack deals devastating damage to anything it succeeds in catching. It bypasses armor and can defeat enemies far larger than the Starfish given enough time. However, it's got a lot of startup lag, so the Starfish needs to make sure it's got a secure grip on the target. This ability makes the Starfish one of the best anti-tank builds in the game, since they can pry open the armor of builds like the Clam and Scallop, and then inflict toxic damage, basically melting them from the inside with acid. The Starfish's final and perhaps most impressive ability is their HP regeneration, which is stronger than any other health regen perk in the entire game, being able to completely regenerate their HP from attacks that would spell game over for most other builds. As impressive as the Starfish's abilities are, its stats leave a lot to be desired, having an intelligence level near 0 and a mobility level on par with that of a snail. But in the right player's hands, the Starfish build can go much further than you might expect. Next on the tier list is the Sponge build, the easiest creature to play in the entire game. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a fan of the Sponge build since it's a build catered towards the playstyle of literally AFKing. Sponges gain XP by filter feeding and thus don't require any decision making or active attention at all to do well. Sponges have a mobility, attack, stealth, and intelligence stat of 0. They don't move, hunt, think, or hide from their enemies. They just sit there and accumulate free XP from the debris in the water. Since they have 0 ability to react to attacks from enemy players, you'd think they would be easy pickings for everyone, and not fare well at all in the current meta. Normally this would be the case, however sponges are worth negative XP to most other builds, because they've incorporated tiny shards of glass into their bodies that damage players trying to feed on them. Some sponges also have an AoE toxic debuff active, lowering the incentive to attack them even further. Some builds, like the Sea Turtle, have resistance to these sorts of countermeasures, and can derive some benefit from attacking sea sponges, but even then, their efforts are better spent on more high-value targets, like jellyfish, snails, and seaweed. So in summary, sponges are upper mid-tier because they simply aren't worth the effort to fight, and their ease of gameplay means they pretty much always succeed in the Reef meta. Not exactly a build I'm excited to sing the praises of, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't fairly assess them. In A tier we've got the Octopus build. The Octopus is a hybrid between a stealth-based build and an intelligence-based one, having exceptionally high levels in both stats. They've got the Shapeshift and Color Change ability that lets them get the Camouflage stealth bonus in just about any environment, and their intelligence lets them solve problems using tools and learn new skills by observation. Disappointingly, in the show, Squidward isn't really shown to use the Color Change ability much. Another thing not shown in the show is that every octopus is at least somewhat venomous. Venom is a powerful tool for taking down prey, and since even a single bite can deal the venom effect for massive damage, venom is also quite effective for pressuring attackers to steer clear. Their suction cups give them a powerful grip, and to be perfectly honest, the octopus is essentially a superior version of the starfish. In addition to having suction cups, multiple arms, regenerative abilities, and venom, the octopus build also gets access to tons of high-level abilities like tool use, shapeshift, and inkjet. The starfish does have one advantage over cephalopods, in that its lifespan is significantly longer. The top tier resident of Bikini Bottom is...
Mrs. Puff
The pufferfish build is a variant on the basic fish class that spends all of its points unlocking not one, but two separate high-level defensive abilities and one offensive ability, those being the Spike Ball and Neurotoxin on defense, and Armor-Piercing Beak on offense. The Spike Ball ability deals damage to the attacker whenever they connect a physical strike on you, and switching to the ball stance also makes bite and grab attacks less accurate against you. This ability is great for countering most of the common threats in the reef meta, and its only drawback is that it reduces the pufferfish's speed while it's active. The pufferfish build doesn't really care about losing speed, since it doesn't really rely on speed for escaping or attacking, so it's a great trade. Its second defensive ability, Neurotoxin, ensures that builds in higher weight classes can't just swallow it whole without risk too. The Neurotoxin would paralyze any player who actually managed to get past its first line of defense. Honestly, having two separate measures of defense is a bit overkill, but considering the pufferfish manages to also have a solid offensive capability too, I won't knock it too much. Speaking of, the pufferfish is another extremely effective tank buster build. It has teeth that absolutely destroy armor, meaning defensive builds like the clam, crab, and snail get demolished in matchups against the pufferfish. This impressive blend of defense and offense makes the pufferfish one of the best fish builds in the game in my opinion, and easily the top tier of Bikini Bottom. It's no wonder Mrs. Puff is shown bodying basically everyone in the show. Hopefully now you've got a good understanding of the Bikini Bottom meta. Also, I hope you like collaborations like this, because a bunch of creators and I have collaborated on an absolutely massive project, a brand new platform called Nebula. Nebula serves as a way for creators like Legal Eagle and myself to host our content free of demonetization and algorithmic suppression. It's our own subscription video streaming service, where we've been uploading not just our regular videos, but also several new originals. Soon, I'll be putting out my own Nebula exclusive original content too, but for now, there's already an entire library of content from some of YouTube's best educational creators ready to be watched. Nebula has actually partnered with CuriosityStream, so you can get access to Nebula for free when you sign up for a membership with CuriosityStream. If you've been watching this channel for any length of time at all, I'm sure you've already heard me sing the praises of CuriosityStream. But in case you're new, CuriosityStream is the best place on the internet for high-quality educational documentaries and nonfiction titles. It hosts several of my favorite nature documentaries, including many of the dinosaur documentaries that I've parodied so frequently. If you click the link in the description, you'll get a free trial of both services. And the free subscription to Nebula stays for as long as you're a CuriosityStream member. So for only $20 a year, you can get total access to not one, but two of the best places on the internet for high-quality educational content. And as I said, I'll be dropping some great originals there soon that I wouldn't want you to miss. I hope to see you there, and until next time, good luck out there.